Hey, good afternoon, everybody. So let's see, so you're at 4,600. All right, well, those residential central folks were close on their 2,700. So they started putting a lot of pressure on me. So I gave them a little bit to get them to 2,700. So maybe what I'll do is I'll do a match. So if you can do another 200, I'll match that 200, and that'll get you to the 5,000. How about that? Well, it's great to be here. Sorry, I got this heavy thing in my pocket now. It's great to be here, and you never really know sort of what happens out there in all of our locations unless you go there and you see it. So this is Mike and Adam and I, and we've talked about this a lot. The most enjoyable thing you can do is actually be out in the field. And that's one of the challenges for me and maybe many of you in managerial roles now is, as time goes by and you sort of move in your positions, it gets harder and harder to be out there in the field as much as you want, because you start to be encumbered by the thousands of administrative things that have to go on in an organization like this to keep the trains running on time. But this is always my favorite thing to do, whether it's in a four-person home of 4 women living together, and all of them have a developmental disorder but living together in a subdivision in Austin, or whether it's going into one of our homes helping seniors age in place, or whether it's being at one of our rehab facilities for somebody who just had a stroke, or somebody who has to live in a residential facility their whole life because of what happened to them and they don't have any other support system. Being in one of our pharmacies. If you haven't been to one of our pharmacies, they're very cool. Doug Russell runs that business. It's some of the best run pharmacy logistics you'll ever see. And now our sort of growing behavioral health business under this woman Tabitha that we hired, who's a real rock star. Or seeing our telehealth product at work with the telecaregivers that we have up in Indiana today, and that's a business and a team that we have to grow like crazy. And then of course with you guys in your business. So it's great, and you can, as you guys sort of probably well know, you can get a sense of how well something is run and the culture the second you step in that door. And so I could just even tell within minutes of meeting the team here, and then walking up here, and you ask 3 or 4 questions, and you can start to get a feel pretty quickly for how things work. And not having any incidents for 2 years that you've been here is phenomenal. And that for me is the number one thing. It's incredible what we do in terms of training and skills development to move people to a different station and give them different capabilities so that they can use those throughout their life and get better jobs. But first and foremost, what's always on my mind is just making sure everybody's safe, and less of an issue for folks in our career centers, but in places that involve a residence or where we're going into homes, that safety is just first and foremost. So it's thank you guys for running. All of our Job Corps centers are sort of run like this, and when you say Job Corps to certain folks, it can be a little bit nerve-wracking, right? Getting a lot of youth in from different backgrounds. Now they're all in one place together, and how does that go down? But our facilities are like this, and uniforms, and it's on lockdown, and people leave here down one of their 4 paths, as I was just being educated on, and it's a life changer. So more government officials need to see things like this, and I would encourage you guys. The number one, it's funny, on my way over here, I got a terrific email from one of our home care leaders, and one of our branches in Tennessee. They just did an open house, and they brought in everybody from the community just to talk about their services and whatnot. Those are some of the most powerful things you can do, is to invite the community to come in and see what you do and talk about the services you provide and hopefully the quality. So, and that's not only sort of referral sources for us in our different businesses in those markets, but that level of community engagement can also apply to all of the politicians and the folks in state roles and federal roles that we work with, and inviting them to come out to see what we do is incredibly powerful. The number one thing Darren and I just really worked out. There's Governors Association meetings throughout the year, and we're a sponsor of that. because the states are so important in what we do. Without adequate funding and in a regulatory environment from the states, that can make life difficult. And one of the things that Darren and I are constantly doing in every meeting are educating people on what we do and who the people that we take care of are. And for example, in Medicaid, on the IDD side of our company in home care, these are not the otherwise 26-year-old able-bodied individuals who aren't working, who are on Medicaid. Who we are taking care of, these are people who were born with Down syndrome or some other significant behavioral issue that doesn't go away, and so they will need care for their whole life. Or it's senior citizens who want to age in place, and they don't want to bounce around skilled nursing facilities and long-term care facilities as long as they can. And what we're able to do by taking care of those people in the community just saves billions of dollars to the healthcare system. And so, but you actually have to sit there and educate. I would have thought that is just sort of self-evident what we do, but even these governors are foggy, a lot of them, on who it is we actually take care of. And the people that we take care of are the people that Medicaid was originally intended for. And so as a lot of Republicans in particular look at things like Medicaid, it's become the biggest cost bucket in the world. It's the biggest healthcare system in terms of dollars spent in the world. And so a lot of people look at it and they think of the 26-year-old who's just not working, who otherwise could, and they say we got to cut that. So one of the things that we're really making sure that we do is we understand, we're trying to really educate people to understand exactly who our people served and clients are, and how those were the folks that these entitlement programs were set up for, because that is that is what they require to be taken care of, and that's the safety net that society needs to be able to provide. So, but you get up on stage at these things, or when we meet with folks, and you say, look, we take care of very high need populations in the community, saving the system a ton of money and trying to do it in the highest quality way that we can. And we put people back to work. And when you talk about those two things in terms of you can boil everything in our company down. Everything we do in our company comes down to those two things. And those two things are probably one of the strongest value propositions you can have as a company in the world we live in. I don't know about you guys, but everything I read, 80% of what I read out there in the press, if it's not something about the Middle East, if it's something about domestic policy, it's talking about what do we do about healthcare, what do we do about an aging population, and how do we drive employment. And that's what this company does across the board. Our mission statement is to impact communities for the better by really making a difference in these populations of very high need, creating great environments for them, and giving them a better life. In every single one of our businesses, whether it's that IDD business, whether it's home care, whether it's rehab, whether it's the pharmacy, the behavioral services, and the rest assured telehealth that goes with those three, or whether it's workforce services, every one of our businesses shares that mission statement. And I tend to think there's a lot of overlap opportunity between workforce and our other businesses than maybe we've thought about before. So. But thank you guys for what you do, and being here is another reflection of what we do in the communities every day around the country. We're in 42 states. We have 4,000 to 5,000 programs of our own, homes or programs or offices of our own, and then we go into about 30,000 other people's homes a year. 60,000 people a day is sort of the rough number we talk about in terms of who we're working with. That is a huge impact, and and that's an incredible opportunity, but also a responsibility. So, thank you guys for everything that you do. I heard Governor Walker was with you guys this morning. That's always fun. I'm sure it went well. He could not be, as you probably saw, more enthusiastic about the work that this division and some of you in particular have done in Wisconsin, whether it's been FSET or some of the other stuff. So I'll tell you, I was at a dinner over there at that conference last night, and Governor Bevin of Kentucky and Governor Walker were the keynote speakers for dinner. And Governor Walker literally spent his entire 30 minutes when he was on the podium last night at dinner talking about job creation in Wisconsin. And what he was talking about that whole time was what our team has done in the state of Wisconsin for. That was the entire focus of his speech, right? So he's out there and he can... So he's out there, and these guys are all fully aware, and you know what? Actually, when you get to know a lot of them, there are some outstanding people that are. It gives you hope. There's some outstanding. We met with the governor of Missouri this morning, Governor Greitens, who's new to his office. I mean, just rock star, and they get it, and they're trying to pursue innovation. But Governor Walker could have talked about whatever he want. He knows somebody's probably taping this conversation, and who knows what his other grander plans are. So you always know that what you say is going to get listened to. And what do you think he talks about? He talks about this with his whole speech. And so anyway, I almost got up at the end and sort of took credit for it, but I decided after a glass of wine that probably wouldn't be funny. So I didn't do that, but I'm sure that was really fun to have him over here. So hey, I just wanted to mention 3 quick things because I know your time is valuable. This is a unbelievably expensive meeting to put together. Look around and sort of think about the travel and time costs, but they're also critical meetings to have. And so all we ever ask is that make them as productive as possible. Talking about hopefully your strategies, but how you're going to execute on those, what matters most, how do we become the absolute undisputed provider of choice, how do we win as many RFPs as we can, how do we keep every single contract we can to the extent it's within our power, and then how do you guys always focus on just having a great team of people and a great culture. And I really hope above everything else you guys share with each other and develop some colleagues and friends that you might be in LA, but is there somebody in Atlanta in our company that you can learn from and share from? Sharing ideas. That's the number one thing in my opinion that gets missed in big companies that have so many locations and different sites. Is oftentimes you just miss great sharing and sort of peer mentoring that can exist. So I would encourage you guys to literally find buddies out there where you make a point to talk to each other, put it on the calendar, otherwise it'll never happen. Make a point to talk to each other once a month. How are you doing? What are you doing over there? What's working? What's not? Here's what I need help with. The more that you guys sort of share with each other, is incredible. As Governor Bevin, I'm just going to start stealing quotes from all these guys when they do speeches. Governor Bevin last night talked all about sort of the power of one, and he's going into Kentucky and he's got all this change he's trying to drive and he's doing really well. But when you have a team that's sort of working together, when the answer is no, but the answer should be yes, there's really nothing that can stop you. And so I would just hope that you guys use this as a time to see each other face to face and get some good quality time and hopefully have a little bit of fun mixed into the travel and the meetings as well. So, but I'll try to be brief because I know they want to give us a tour here quickly. I'll just hit 3 topics real quick. Number one, I just wanted to again impress upon you how important this division and this business and this company is for our broader enterprise. It really is great. Not only the services that we provide, which the reason that we have such a high win rate on our proposals is that you guys do a good job, and that is the number one. Tim will tell you, any salesperson will tell you every day of the week, the number one arrow you can have in your quiver as a sales leader is to have a high quality product to sell. You can be the smoothest talking person in the world with great collateral to show, but you need to be able to point to a product that works. And so just having great outcomes and great teams wherever you are is an incredible thing that you've been able to deliver on. And it's what's driving the success of this business. And then any business needs to function well and run well. And so just being very operationally sound is something that I hope you guys always try to aspire to be a poster child for in our company. And then from a growth standpoint, all of our businesses we're in, including this one, they're so big that there's still so much market share potential for us to go and just dominate this market. So I love the fact that probably one of your and our biggest challenges is bandwidth and resources to grow. And what I've told Adam and Mike is, do whatever you need to do to add resources and to continue to populate this team and grow people up to step up into new roles to take on more and more contracts. Because, by doing that, if we're the best provider in the space, we're going to be able to deliver more and more better and improved outcomes to folks out there who need these services. And I love our approach. The fact that we go in and take a very employer-led approach to say, what are the needs of this market versus just saying, here's what we do. The fact that we try to use technology to differentiate ourselves, these are essential in terms of being a provider of choice in any market. And things that have been incredibly successful, like the FSET program in Wisconsin. We were just with Governor Greitens in Missouri this morning, and he basically said, "Who can I talk to about what you're doing in Wisconsin? I want to do that here." Obviously, Bevan in Kentucky wants to do that in other states, in Indiana. So, we've got to leverage those types of wins and successes as much as possible, and take them to more and more states. But just number one, thank you for everything that you do, and you're in the thick of it. Everything out of our president's mouth, not everything, but the good things out of his mouth tend to be around job creation, and so it's right in the crosshairs of what needs to happen. I was on a panel with Bevan this morning talking about healthcare, and one of our biggest challenges is that it's just really hard to find staff. My last company I was talking to somebody the other day. They're in the home health and hospice industry. They literally are at a point where they almost can't find nurses or therapists to hire. And you're talking about even $80,000, $90,000, $100,000, sort of high-end clinicians. In some markets, they cannot staff cases because they can't hire these folks. It's crazy. And for us, the number one thing that's changed about our company in the last 5 years that I've come to understand is that 5 years ago, for home care and IDD in particular, we could go hire whoever we want. That is not the case anymore. And that's why we've had to do things like hire 20 people in a new staffing solutions team purely focused on driving applicant volume and to hire people. So, you think about even some of our jobs, and I know that, your focus is often on training people for jobs other than what we do, but job creation is just going to be so central to this country going forward. And the Republicans, whether you're left or right on the political spectrum, the Republicans are going to probably be around for a little while, and they want to start putting a lot of things in place with Medicaid populations that where there's work requirements, right? You can't get Medicaid anymore if you're an able-bodied individual unless you're showing that you're trying to get a job. And so you guys are going to continue to be a big part of the solution out there. So that's exciting. It's always good to be in an area where you've got the wind at your back. Number two, I just sort of always just take a second and talk a little bit more broadly about the company. Sometimes I don't know how much to talk about that because people just tend to say, well, here's where I am in my world, and I don't know how much that affects me. But I think everybody likes to sort of understand what's going on more broadly at the enterprise. So I'll just spend a couple minutes on that. Number one, we're doing really well. We've had, I've been here, it's hard to believe, already 6 or 7 months, and we've had a great 6 or 7 months thanks to so many important people that we have in this organization. You guys have been a big part of that with your results. But broadly, for the first time in quite a while as an enterprise, we're sort of beating our financial goals and objectives and quality measures out of the gates. And if we get a little luck here, knock on some serious wood. But if we get a little luck here through a few state budget cycles, places like you're in the Medicaid world. Texas has a budget issue because of oil prices. That suddenly becomes your problem too. So, but we'll work our way through that like we always have. And, there's a lot of states where we get rate increases every year because they absolutely understand the incredible value of what we do. And so we'll work our way through these and that'll go fine. And we are on pace to have a really, really good year as an organization. And what that is allowing us to do is to plow money into areas of investment that we think are really important. So we're spending a lot of time and energy and investments in the areas of people and technology. And I don't know how much in particular you've seen that or that's been relevant in your world, but for me, I just, and hopefully for a lot of you, within reason, I place a huge premium on having really good, smart people around you. And, sometimes, as a manager, it can be a little bit hard sometimes to justify, well, if I hire that person, what's going to happen? Will I get a return? But, a lot of times it's pretty obvious, hey, we need a good person right there. That process needs to be standardized. It needs to be best in class. Get somebody in here who can do it. And so we've spent a lot of time investing in people. I think in the corporate center alone, and then I would call them managerial jobs in the field in our company, I think we have something like 120 or 130 new hires in the last 6 or 7 months. Now, I will tell you that we also probably have 110 or so people that are no longer with our company. And so we're really trying to thread the needle and find ways to make balanced investments while we also hit other goals. So we're trying to invest at the same time that we're trying to continue to strengthen and grow. And that's something that requires a lot of thought and a lot of planning. But overall, I think from a people infrastructure standpoint, we're going to continue to get stronger and stronger and stronger. And it's just very simple. Any business that we're in, any market we're in, we all should have a desire, and I believe this about this group. We need to have the best people in our company in any market we're in. Period. It's as simple as that. I tell those guys in residential every single day. We're about, it's a little bit confidential. We're about to hire a woman for Kentucky in the IDD space. She's probably one of the best people in IDD in the United States, and she is going to get that Kentucky state where it needs to be within 12 months. And we're going to be a model, and Governor Bevin's going to be able to talk about us in his white papers, et cetera, right? But the woman's name is Shannon. Every state needs a Shannon, and that's sort of what they understand. And we've taken a lot of steps to start to do that in a lot of areas of our company. We're also making a ton of investments in technology. I know you guys have spent time on that in your division, but more broadly, electronic health records for our other divisions. And we're really trying to get after it with everything that we do with telehealth and our Rest Assured products. So we're big believers that different applications, but if you can put that telemonitoring in our IDD homes, and if seniors can use that in their homes, number one, the quality and safety is going to be dramatically different, and it just will. And we see where we use it, how you get that second set of eyes in there, and it's such a critical population that you're taking care of, and it's too important not to sort of do everything you can to make sure that you're tops in quality and safety. The other thing that'll allow us to do is, like, there's an aircraft hovering above us. Is it a storm outside? It's raining like crazy. That's what it is. I think there's, like, I was seeing on the weather this morning, I think there's like a hurricane down near Cuba. Not here, down near Cuba. But I think Miami this afternoon was set to get a bunch of sort of surrounding rain from that. But anyway, when you think about what I said earlier in terms of what's important in these industries, staffing, the logistics of what we do is massive. You guys know this in terms of trying to get people new jobs, right? But the applicant management, the recruiting, the hiring, the onboarding, it's the logistics of that across 50, 60,000 people a year is tremendous. And so as we think about our company in the future, one of the things that we have to help solve for the industry is the shortage of labor. And one of the ways you can do that is through telehealth and telecaregiving. We believe, if allowed to use that to the extent that we would want to, you could potentially reduce our need for labor by about 40% in certain parts of our company. So it's a huge part of not only our sort of quality and health strategy, but also it's a key part of actually just reducing our demand for labor in some of these industries where you're just not going to find a lot of staff in some places. So we're spending a lot of time on that. And I would say just within the technology world, there's other things we're working on. We're piloting an app right now in Indiana that one of our biggest challenges when you have organizations of this size spread out is how do you reach everybody? It drives me crazy that I can't simply send a note to one of your team members in your office. I can't see it. It's frustrating. And so, we're working with a company that has an app that, you sign up for the app and it's great. It's managed really well, but it basically allows any of us in the organization to communicate with anybody else. And what's the one thing that, I don't care if you make $5,000 a year or $100,000 a year, what's the one thing that everybody still owns? They own a smartphone. I think it's something like 94% own a smartphone. And the read rates on these things are really impressive. It's a way you drive engagement. The use cases could be many. This is where I go to access my training. This is where I go to see my paycheck. My manager can communicate this to me. Hey, if I'm a residential manager, I need a shift. I pop that out to see who wants to grab that shift. Just managers, people like us, being able to tell people congratulations, share success stories. It's something that hopefully really drives engagement. So there's 7 or 8 other areas of technology like the 3 I've mentioned that we're really pushing on hard with our new CIO, Chuck Fitch, who's great. And we want this to be a technology-led and enabled company in these industries. And sort of wrapped around a lot of that technology is our strategy called the Connected Home. So within, again, IDD and home care, it's 5 things. It's getting onto an electronic health record. It's our pharmacy solution, where we deliver the right drugs to the home and specialty packaging. It drives adherence, it drives reconciliation to reduce the pharmacy spend. Number 3 is our telemonitoring we've talked about. Number 4 is growing that behavioral business and wanting to bring out more of a care management capability set. So we have people living in our homes all day long, and we're going into other people's homes all day long, right? So starting to get more broadly into, well, what's the total health cost of that person? That's the huge pie that's out there that all the managed care companies are looking at. So instead of just taking care of Tom in our home every day and thinking about, the ADLs, the activities of daily living, and all the other things we do, and some of the clinical things he needs, and getting paid for the state by that, Tom's probably got another, depending on who you are, on average, 30,000 costs a year of his healthcare costs, right? How do we start to help with that? So bringing in NPs and case managers who can start to become the primary clinician, home-based primary care it's called, and stepping in front of some of those and some of those healthcare exacerbations to lower healthcare costs. That's very interesting. And then number 5, at the heart of all of that, is having a data engine that can run the analytics and the correlations and present the data to states and payers in a way that's not paper, in a way that they want to see it. So, and that's why we went with the EHR company that we chose, is because they have this great data warehouse and analytics capability, and they're already tapped into all these states. So those 5 things are really what we're driving with from a connected home strategy in the rest of our company. And when we talk about these things repeatedly to the folks that we talk about them with in state government and other places, I would say 60 conversations in the last 6 months sort of around this idea and what we're doing. And every single conversation is, how can we do this in my state? How can we help? Do you need me to do things from a regulatory perspective to free you up to do these things? So, we don't do all 5 of those things everywhere today, but we do every one of those things somewhere today, and we're gonna be the leader. And so our opportunity, whatever division we have, is to take the businesses we're in and really apply innovation and best practice to be the unquestioned standout leader in our space by doing things a better way. You look at something like that IDD industry, it is old school, but these populations are massive and there's a huge need. Us taking care of these folks instead of being in a state institution, it saved 30% of the cost. Like, the value proposition of what we do is tremendous if these people had to go back to institutions. Plus, most of them want to be in the community setting, and the courts have ordered that that's where they need to be, right? So it's a huge value proposition. That population, believe it or not, there's 5.2 million people in the United States who are diagnosed with an intellectual developmental disorder, 1.6% of our population. It's huge, and that doesn't even count autism, which is another like 1.2%. It's just a massive area of need that, I'll be candid. Until I came into this job, I sort of had very little information or knowledge of that population and who takes care of them. And, we just need to make sure that they don't get left behind. And so it's a $65 billion industry. Like, that's big. That's really big. And there are 6,000 providers. We're the biggest. And in the states where we operate, we have 5% market share. Like, that's low. And on a national basis, we have 1% market share of folks who are seeing IDD, people with IDD being served in the community under a state waiver. That's a $44 billion industry. We have 1% market share. All the companies are mostly on paper today. They don't provide outcomes. They don't track outcomes. We are going to overhaul how that industry looks. We are going to be the company that goes into this 50-year-old industry, and we're going to take it and we are going to overhaul what that industry looks like. And we'll make strides every year, but to really do what we want to do, it might take 3 or 4 or 5 years. And ultimately, we'll probably be a very, very close partner with payers, because they need somebody that can help them manage those populations ultimately as they step into that. And very few other providers are going to be able to do what we do. And so that's why folks like Anthem are wanting to talk to us yesterday about how can you help us manage these populations. So that's where we're headed on that front. Same story overall for home care. You know, one of the only differences on home care is that we really want to grow that private pay piece. So, you know, Medicaid pays for about 85% today, but then about 10 or 15% of our people we serve today are private pay. And that's a huge market as well. And so we want to grow into that private market as much as we can. And there's also a huge opportunity there with payers to partner up, right? What they care about every day is folks who leave hospitals and go back to the community. What happens now? And you know the three reasons people readmit the most to a hospital? And this was a major panel topic on our healthcare panel this morning. It's not the clinical stuff. Yeah, sometimes there's a wound that's an issue, got to go back to the hospital. Other times you got to go back for complications from whatever surgery you had. But it's, I didn't take my medication the day I went home. I didn't eat a meal in my first couple days. I'm out of whack now. And it's things like I can't get up and down stairs. It's the non-medical stuff that much greater than 50% of the time shoots people right back to the hospital. That's the stuff that we have the ability to fix and be a part of the solution for. So working with payers to say, okay, for this population, well, guess what? We have a pharmacy solution that'll make sure the drugs get to them. We'll make sure there's 100% adherence. We can put telemonitoring capabilities in that home along this sort of a care plan that do these things specifically for that specific patient type. We've got home care going in there doing the ADLs. If you need an escalated level of care, we'll get a therapist in there, right? We can do all these things. And so that's where that business is headed as well. And then obviously from a workforce perspective, I think we just have a tremendous opportunity to continue to take innovative programs. How do you take more and more people and put them back to work in interesting ways? You know, there's a lot of different things we do around the country that are very innovative and interesting, and continuing to share those and do those in more and more states. And I think there's going to be more and more of a connection over time to jobs and people realizing that those are also ways to lower healthcare costs, right? So there's all these, what's the terminology again when we were having lunch with the Navigant guy yesterday? These, what factors, you know what we're talking about here? Do you have a car? Do you have a place to live? These things that drive you back to hospitals or not. They're like, they're social factors. There's a word there. I can't believe I'm forgetting it. Social determinants. And so, Darren, come on. And so there's all these social determinants where there's now a lot of data that, you know, if somebody doesn't have a home, what do you think is going to happen? If somebody can't get transportation to and from important places, what do you think is going to happen? And so what it's all pointing to is if you don't have that infrastructure in place in the community for certain people, your healthcare costs get out of whack for that population. There's a direct correlation between having a job. There's a direct correlation between having a home with your healthcare. And the payers are all really starting to realize this. So I think over time, you're going to start to see a lot of interesting things we can be doing with the payers as they really focus on making sure their populations are working as much as possible. So, you know, across all of our businesses in the company, you know, how do we change the game and step forward? And that's what everybody wants to talk about. They want to hear solutions, right? Should we get a 3%, 2% rate increase in every state we're in for the services we provide? Of course we should. All right. You know, do I feel like our rate should be higher in a lot of states today so we can pay people $15 an hour instead of $11 an hour? Of course. if all we do is go and talk to states and governors and governments about just give me a rate increase, just give me a rate increase, is that ever really going to get us to where we want to be? That's going to go nowhere, right? So, now we're pushing as hard as we can for annual rate increases, but sometimes you get them, sometimes you don't, and sometimes you even go backwards, which is really frustrating. But that can't be the only solution. So for every one of our businesses we're in, we need to talk about how we can continue to innovate, use technology, use new programs and products to be more efficient with how we deliver services, and then to actually really help lower overall healthcare costs. And that's what we have to do, because that's what we do today, and now we just need to really start capturing a lot of the things we do and use this technology as smartly as we can. So that's where we're headed as a company. And I think that's really exciting. At a minimum, we're doing and talking about things that none of our competitors have. So it just becomes an execution game. We've just got to be very clear on what we're supposed to do, and we've just got to execute like crazy and make it happen. And if we do that, we will truly change what these industries look like. And that's the fun part of being at a big company. You're able to pursue innovation and change that other companies just simply can't do. And we're going to be a consolidator as well. We have a huge opportunity to go buy a ton of companies in the industries, very specifically, very selectively. But if there's attractive providers or other companies even in your space, we are going to start to get probably in another 6 months or so pretty aggressive about wanting to grow our scale as much as we can, because it's just a massive opportunity, and there's so many benefits of a little bit more size and scale in these industries. If you're a state, there are 300 home care providers in St. Louis, Missouri. They're like, I've had it. They're putting a moratorium on it. They're not going to allow anybody else, because any one of us tomorrow could be some home care provider and try to get 7 or 8 clients, and for a lot of people they can eke out a pretty good existence doing that. But they're like, no more. I mean, if you're the state of Nebraska who's complaining about this all day long, or the city of St. Louis, do you think they'd rather deal with one or a couple companies? Or imagine the bureaucracy and the people they have to deal with 300 companies in the area, tracking them down, monitoring them. It's a nightmare. None of it makes sense. None of it. And so, everybody in healthcare is trying to find their way out of a system that was set up, where, the only thing that mattered is once you're in my 4 walls, and I'm going to pay you some fixed amount for that. There's no other industry in the world where you're not accountable for your costs. Just imagine that. Like if you were running a company and it didn't matter what your costs were because somebody else was going to pay regardless. Like that just doesn't work, right? So we can help be a huge part of that solution. And I can tell you that when you proactively, as you guys hopefully do all the time, when you proactively go to people in the state and in the federal government and give them ideas and appeal to their needs and give them solutions, they will never turn a deaf ear to that. That is what they are desperate for. And they believe that the answer should come from industry, and that government's job, hopefully, is to sort of make the environment for operating a conducive one, right? But the ideas need to come from folks like us. So, sort of just broadly where we are as a company right now, and I think we're in a really good place, and I think it'll probably take a few more years to fully realize all that we want to do, and then even in a few more years' time, things will have changed, and we'll probably set some more goals. But I think it's the thing that's always easy to forget, if you're in a managerial role, is that you kind of tend to assume that everybody knows what you do. So, when I go home every night, I kind of tend to assume, hey, Tim knows everything we're doing in home care. Like, I see everything that's going on in the company. Surely everybody knows everything we're doing. Think about your teams. Like, they only see what they see, right? So, I'm trying to do as good of a job and frankly a better job of stopping and just trying to communicate as much as possible, because people don't know what's going on unless they're involved in it and unless they hear about it. So but there are a tremendous amount of things going on in our company, and as I've said before, as painful as it is to lose somebody who's great and doing a great job where they are now, if we have other opportunities in the company for them that are interesting, that are opportunities for people that are going to be further growth, we got to be open to those. And so if somebody wanted to go do something really interesting in home care or rehab, or somebody wanted to come over into workforce, I think that's one of the benefits of being in a company that has multiple businesses is, you can basically choose if you're a high performer, you could essentially choose to live in any city in the United States that you want to, because odds are we've got an operation there. And we've just got to be open to creating an environment where people internally can be selected for opportunities where we have. So I don't know that many companies actually do a very good job of having people cross-fertilize. So that's just always something that we're supportive of, but probably takes your initiative if you ever want to look into things like that. And again, as painful as that is, but that's why you groom people behind you. Your number one job, the best advice I think I've ever heard in terms about how to do your job well, do your job in a way that no longer requires you to be there. If you do your job in a way where you are not required to be there anymore, you have built people around you and systems around you that work without you micromanaging it. And that's really hard to do. And the irony of that is that people who can do that are the most important people in an organization. So, aspire to that. That's a really good aspiration to have. And that just sort of segues into my third piece, after sort of workforce and this business, what's going on at our company, and just I think you as people and leaders and culture. At the end of the day, it's so simple. You can work at different companies in different industries. It is so simple. The number one thing that determines success of any organization is the quality and the strength of the leader and the manager. I told Mark was asking, Mark runs our residential business, and we were talking about, and he's still getting his feet wet after 4 months, and he was asking a lot of questions about a big meeting we have coming up, and sometimes I tend to dive in. I can't help myself. It's just because I'm interested, and I like to try to help if I can. But other times, in certain areas, I try to hold back. And we were talking about things for that meeting, and much like Mike and Adam and others, they did everything for this meeting. And I told Mark, I go, Mark, at the end of the day, on June 2nd, every little detail in that meeting, I'm going to look to you on. Now, I'm not, if something goes wrong with training, I'm not going to look at Melissa. That's your meeting, right? You own it. Like, life becomes very, very simple when there's an owner, right? When there's 5 hands in terms of this, that, and the other, who owns it? Who's the leader? Who's in charge of taking care of what goes on in that room, that location, that business? And that's how you got to think about it. At the end of the day, if you're in a managerial position, and if you don't want, and if this isn't your thing, then don't do it. Because a lot of people are terrible at management. Even by my nature, I don't love to do it. I like to sort of do my own thing and think that everybody else just does their job well. But part of it is trying to make sure that the trains do run on time everywhere, and that's our responsibility. And so, like it or not, at the end of the day, if you're in a leadership or a management position, every little thing that goes on under your level is your responsibility. It's not somebody else's. It's theirs too, but you're the one who's there to make sure it happens. And I would embrace that. And that goes back to what I said before. The best way to have an easy existence in that sort of a structure is have a great team, hire well, train them, and put common sense process in place that people stick to and follow. All right, those are the simple ways to go about it. So I really, really just hope that you guys all endeavor to become the strongest leaders and managers as people as you can. Every year of your life, every day of your life is an opportunity to learn something new and get a little bit better. Life is sort of one big learning experience, and you're going to make probably 5 mistakes this week, and every day I sort of go to bed and I'm like, I wish I would have done that a little better. But you always got to remember the great things you do every day too. But just try to have clear goals and work towards your goals every day. And like it or not, a lot of people watch you, right? So for people who work in one of your career centers, they don't see this. They don't go to Louisville. You are the company to them. Like, you are the company to them. That's who they associate with. You guys all know the statistic. 90% of people leave companies because of their manager. They don't leave the company. And so, just remember that people are always watching, and embrace that. That's an opportunity to be just a great example. You have kids. I got 4 little kids at home. In the back of my mind all the time is, it doesn't always, prevent me from doing something stupid in front of them. But in the back of my mind, I always know that they're watching. And you probably have all seen examples of little kids repeat something back to you that you said 3 months ago, and you're like, how do you even remember that? And I have one in particular who's unbelievable at observing and remember, and he will repeat it back to you 4 months later. They love the movie Elf. I don't know if you've seen Elf. It is, that's one of the great things about being a parent. Some of these kids' movies are like awesome movies. And Elf with Will Ferrell is one of them. And James Caan, his dad, is just hysterical in that movie. And there was a line from that movie where somebody said to Will Ferrell, the elf, I hope you find your dad. And I'm sitting there with my little kid Philip, who's 4. About 7:30, the kids rush off to school, and then I try to change to get to work real quick if I don't take them to school. And the 3 kids are in the car, running into the car, flying out the driveway. And Philip sticks his head out the door and yells to the kids, "I hope you find your dad." And so he will just quote movies at just the most random times. To a waiter in a restaurant, he'll say something from a movie. And but it's always such a good reminder of people are sponges, and like it or not. I mean, think about it yourself. That's why in legacy, the E is environment. It is very difficult to separate yourself from your environment sometimes, and just think about how great it is to be around good people versus how draining it is to be around negative and bad people. And look, there's good days and bad days. There's lots to do in offices. It's busy. I mean, we're flying around every day. It's not always roses by any stretch of the imagination. But you want to go. That creates even more of an importance to want to go through that with good people. So. Be an example as best you can, and just embrace the idea that the buck stops with you. We have a mentality now and a motto in our IDD residential business of, it sounds a little tough at first. Mark came up with it. He's sort of an Army guy, but I've sort of come around on it, and they're using this expression of "not on my watch," and it's just sort of that whole focus on safety. But that's the idea of the buck stops with us. And I think when you start to really embrace that, that's an exciting thing. That's a really exciting thing. And there's probably only about, I don't know, a couple % of the population that's in a managerial role. So I hope that you guys, wherever you are, you are the number one factor in our success as an enterprise, and in the results we achieve for our states and for the people that come to us seeking a different place in life. And so I hope you guys just always remember that every day, and even with a lot of the responsibility that comes with it, you have some fun with it, and just own it. You can own your culture. Nobody's going to tell you what poster to put where. Nobody's going to tell you how many thank yous to say in a day to your team. So it's just up to you to own it and try to create a great culture around you. So that's really all I wanted to say. Got it in about 30 or 40 minutes actually, which is about half as short as usual. And I think that'll give us plenty of time to do a little bit of a tour. I'm happy to take just one or a couple impromptu questions. Or I should maybe do like Governor Bevin on the panel this morning. He said, we've sort of run long. Looks like we actually have time for questions. We have 1 minute. So does anybody have a particularly riveting, insightful, and amazingly deep, interesting question to ask? And the room was shockingly quiet, and we disbanded. So, but if there are any questions, I'll absolutely take a few. Darren, do you have a question for me?
I don't, I'm fine.
You okay?
Well, John did look at me when Governor Bevin asked if anyone had a question. I'm like, no, I'm good.
Okay. Well, look, thank you guys again for what you do. I hope this has been a productive meeting. I hope you've enjoyed being here. When Mike first told me you were having a meeting in Miami, I sort of had visions of Key West. But it sounds like you're being somewhat economical, and we're at the airport. But I hope you guys have it. I hope you guys have. Hey, just grow 3% more, and next year the meeting will be on the beach. But I hope you guys have had. Yeah, absolutely. Hey, you know what? This is what I will tell anybody, right? Growth solves everything. You grow and good things happen, right? I mean. Quote it right now. You guys beat your budget by more than whatever this year, and put that $100,000 or whatever into your meeting next year. But growth solves everything. And what I love about this business is your career centers are on track. This has got to be a double digit with the market opportunity that we have. I mean, I go back to that stuff around our IDD market share. It is staggering to me how big the opportunity is. It's staggering. I mean, we're a $2 billion company. If all we did was even have 4 or 5% market share in some of these industries, I mean, we'd be like a $10 billion company. It'd be crazy. And think about the opportunities that presents everybody. We grow and we hit our budgets, and all good things happen. You know, we went out of our way to give merit this year. We gave bonuses for the first time in 5 years. You know, there's a lot of things we've been doing that hasn't gotten a whole lot of airtime, but you know, where we've performed, we're trying, and we're spending probably $5 million more this year on IT than we did last year. I mean, you know that money's got to come from growth, and so growth is good. Good companies are all about growth. Growth isn't a bad thing. Growth is a great thing. It creates opportunities for the people we serve, and it creates opportunities for us. So just grow, 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 and have a growth mentality. Thank you.